are going into the comment section again. I'm going to be answering your questions. This is obviously my thing this month. And I'm going to start with Travis Fitzwater. Hey Travis. And you said, do you believe in ESP? Travis, have you seen my channel? I love ESP. Extra sensory perception is kind of my thing. It's kind of my bag. So a big yes to that, Travis. I'm a believer. All right, this next one is from Marcus Holbert or Marcus Holbert, okay? You said, is battle magic real? Like, is it possible to learn to shoot ki from your body and attack and defend yourself? Or is it Hollywood BS? Are monks up in the Himalayas doing this stuff in secret? All right, so it is real. It is real. For most people, that level of control of their ki or their chi or their vril or their life force is not actually available in the physical body. You have to go through rigorous training of developing the body immortal, or the Venus body, or the higher bodies, learning to bridge them with your physical body for your physical body to behave as though it's an energy body and be fluent in energy movement, energy projection, and psychokinesis. So it absolutely is real. There are times on the planet where we weren't so separate from our energy body. We weren't so separate from our spirit, and our physical bodies were less dense, and we moved more like some of these Hollywood movies say, where they're like pew pew pew, and then there, you know, energy's coming out, and it's like a battle, or you know, you see like a wizard that has a wand and there's like energy shooting out of it. These are actually vestiges of times on the earth where it was less dense, where there was a very high magical culture. You couldn't say then that magic didn't exist, or that chi didn't exist, or the soul didn't exist, or that prana didn't exist, because it was clearly being used in various ways in life. These are also times on the earth where there are also sort of portals opening and closing a lot more, maybe kind of magical beasts coming in and out, or chimeras, or you know, things like fairies, and the elemental kingdom was more visible. The veil was just thinner in general, and humanity had a lot more ease of use. It was just like, were you good at it or not? That was sort of the whole thing. And then you start looking at it, and you look at the idea of Merlin, and the idea of the magician, the warlock, these kind of things, and they start to make a lot more sense when you consider that consciousness was higher, the veil was thinner, these things were possible. Now, they are held in, you can still do these things. Again, you have to really learn to entrain yourself with higher vibrational energies and begin to control matter. You can train yourself. Now, most people are too busy watching Netflix, arguing on Twitter, and you know, whatever we do nowadays that distracts us from our inner work. But there are people who are very dedicated to it and that can do things. One of the places would be the various monks in the Himalayas, or the various monks that exist in their isolated areas. There actually was a monk who could do something very similar. There's actually a few monks. There's actually YouTube videos you can find of it where they are able to actually light paper on fire, or they're actually able to heal, and there's videos of it. And they have learned to channel their chi in a very intense and powerful way, in a physical way, to affect matter. However, it's really looked down upon if you do it in public. And the people who do usually know how to do this, they don't really like trot around being like, hey, look at me, I can zap you, I can, you know, leap over this huge thing. The whole point of building yourself up to be able to do these incredible things is that you don't have ego involved. And they understand that when you have these incredible gifts and these incredible abilities, it is, and you're this far ahead of the public, there's a certain way that you have to act. There's a certain way that you have to interact with the public when you become very, very advanced spiritually and you begin to control your energy in this way. And that way is to not use your powers to gain fame, to gain fortune, or to use it in an egoic way. The whole point of being built up by these great teachers and these great masters is that once you reach that place, you're kind of supposed to be of a certain ilk. And the people who have shared this stuff in that way, some of them have been like punished or even excommunicated from various circles. Most of this stuff, and it's not just in the Himalayas, friends. This happens in mystery schools, in various secret schools, secret, I guess you could say secret societies. These things are still developed to the point where there are special resonating chambers and various places on the earth that have less of a certain, they have a certain magnetic environment where you can go into these places and you can start to see more of how your energy is affecting. It's like a little bit easier to do these things. So it is definitely not just the Himalayas and the monks. Those are the people that come to mind. There's absolutely other people that can do it. And they just don't talk about it because of what it means to have that kind of control and influence over the matter. All right, last question. This question is from Peace Creature. Hey, Peace Creature, thank you for commenting. It looks like your comment was really popular. And when you made this comment, I was so happy because you were bringing something forward that I was thinking as I was making this video. So let's cover it. Peace Creature says, when you talked about how they modified the Lemurian DNA, changing how they perceived light, trying to keep them in a denser state, disconnected from the sun, that sounds very similar to Bill Gates and that agenda. But maybe that's just me. It's not just you, Peace Creature. This comment got a lot of likes. And I was hoping that someone would mention this because as I was in my vision state, I had a visceral reaction to what I was seeing, which was this. I saw a Lemurian person laying down on what looked like a stone altar. And this other person, this other being that basically came from a negative future timeline. I felt like it was like this person was like from the negative group in Atlantis, or they were coming from this negative timeline. They were human too. This was not like a chimera being, which is a being that is half animal, half human. They just looked like humans, which is something that has been so fascinating to me, but I'll get into that in another video. And this person, this Lemurian, was like laying on this altar. And this other person, this other human from this other timeline that was essentially evil, was doing something with the eyes. They were doing something with the eye. They were going into the eye and changing something. They also went into the chakra system, and it was as though, just give me a sec here. I'm going to get it right. It was as though they were inserting, if you can think about like a large blade or something that would like chop up the energy body and be like a block, like a stop. So you have the energy body flowing, and then there was like a block, like it almost felt like a metal, like something that was blocking certain chakras. So the energy couldn't really flow from like the upper to the lower chakras. The energy couldn't flow directly through the energy body anymore. And this was causing a breaking up of consciousness, of their consciousness was not functioning properly anymore. And it was slowing it down. At the end of the day, there's probably a lot of things we can say about what this alteration was, but just for time's sake, it was slowing down the energy body. And the other thing that was weird was that they were also doing something with that, where the person could not receive like enough sun or change their physical body so that it's like they couldn't ever receive enough sun, or it blocked the sun in some way. And this was a big deal because it meant that at that time that the development of that person would slow down, because the rays of sun are so important for our development. And that was, and the other thing that it did was it sort of meant that these darker humans that were trying to kind of like enslave this group of Lemurians, it was pretty much at the end time, most Lemurians had this happen to them, is that they wanted to bind themselves to these Lemurians so that their portal could stay open and it wouldn't close. As long as these Lemurians were functioning in that way, it would bind them to these darker beings, these darker entities. And that was a really big deal for them, because when consciousness rises on a planet, what ends up happening is extremely significant to the portal system that controls what interdimensional beings come and go in our world. When the earth sinks into a dark age, all the portals turn dark too, right? Because the consciousness is going down. And so all the portals to the lower astral plane, the chaos realm, start pouring in and dumping into earth, right? And so you want to keep consciousness down if you are part of the lower astral hierarchies. If you're part of that false light hierarchy, if you are a negative human being, if you're a negative entity, you want to keep earth consciousness down and moving slowly so that humanity doesn't rise out of your spectrum. And if it goes out of the spectrum, what happens to these darker entities? They starve. They collapse. They fall apart. They fall inward. And they then have to start dealing with everything that they've never faced. They have to start dealing with their trauma and dealing with all of their evil deeds. They don't want that. They want to keep feeding on humanity. So they they slowed the consciousness down, and it had a lot to do with stopping them from really being able to receive the sun in their eyes and also in their body, and through causing a disjointed blocks in the energy body. And that was able to keep consciousness low enough to bind these darker entities to the planet. And that's also why sometimes when these catastrophes happen in the past, everyone's like, what a cruel thing to have happen. Well, no, I mean, if humanity sinks super, super low in their consciousness, the earth will succumb to these lower dark portals and may not be able to ever rise out of them, causing the earth to be destroyed, because people will just become so possessed and move into really dark forms that the Gaia will eventually just no longer function as she should. Okay, so sometimes when we hear about deluges, it's very sad and dark, but part of it is Gaia is the earth trying to keep it so that she stays alive, right? So all of this talk about the sun and limiting our ability to pick up the sun with our eyes, or through our body, our energy body and our physical body. This sounds a lot like our favorite character, William Gates, or Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a very strange man, and that's putting it politely. He has a lot of projects that are basically social engineering projects, because we have to understand, when you have billions and billions and billions of dollars, there really isn't joy in hoarding wealth anymore. That's not the most joyful thing you can do. You already won that game. You're already at that level. One of the most amazing things that these people want to do, or one of the things that the next level that they want to get to, is social engineering. And it is control. Once they've got the wealth down, they want to rise to control populations, control people. This is the same story for monarchs and kings of our past and these leaders of the past, where, yeah, eventually the biggest rush you can have is to control populations, to actually be God, to actually play God. This is the highest rush for a lot of people who are, quite honestly, very sick and don't understand how energy works. They don't understand how they don't have a very sophisticated idea about what human beings are and how human beings gain energy and how human beings evolve. It's completely stunted. And so they have to get this power in these weird ways. And a lot of it has to do with dominating people, playing God, lording over people. They're like people that are obsessed with being an overlord. And it's really honestly hard to see. So one of the things that Overlord Bill Gates wants to do, I'm sure this video is going to be like, you know, going through the algorithm now of, you know, I don't know, highlighted. It's going to be put in the bad bin now, I think. But anyway, Bill Gates is basically creating this project where he creates, the last time I checked, it was this thing where this like giant balloon goes into the sky and then it kind of like pops, or somehow all of these particles are distributed in the sky that basically like block the sun. And it's going to be marketed to humanity as a way to prevent global warming, because unfortunately, another thing that these people who are social engineers and that are trying to be overlords, what they'll do is they'll take legitimate issues about the planet, social issues, whatever it is, real issues, and they'll pervert those issues into something that benefits them. So they'll take like the environmental issues, and because they know people feel very passionate about it, they'll try to use environmental issues as a way to introduce bizarre technologies, bizarre schemes, make money for themselves. And they're playing on people's weaknesses. They're playing on people's compassion. They don't have any compassion. So they're playing on people's sense of care. It's predatory, as they often take social issues that are desperately needing to be addressed, but they say they're going to address them, and then what they're really doing is consolidating humanity in a certain way, or introducing something that actually harms humanity and doesn't actually address the problem. And we can see this again and again and again with various sort of proposition and schemes that come from places like the World Economic Forum, people like Bill Gates, who really have not really showed that they're very empathic. I mean, you look at the projects that they're involved in and they're completely profit-based. They're about gaining something, gaining power. And they use the idea of charity, they use the idea of service as a way to get away from it, to get away with it. And so it does seem like this blocking of the sun is a very big deal. We even have the coronavirus being named Corona, and Corona is the name of the sort of crown that surrounds the sun. And in fact, all royalties' crowns are based on saying that they're of a sun lineage, the lineage of the sun. So, because the sun is a 5D stargate, it represents the highest, kind of perfect level of higher consciousness that sobers humanity into its higher self. That's why. If you watch my channel, y'all know that. So, what we're looking at, if we combine the controlling of the sun in Mu, probably also Atlantis. I haven't psychically investigated Atlantis in regards to this issue, but when we're looking at it with Mu, and then we see the same thing kind of happening now, what it makes me realize is that the sun starts to change at the end of a cycle. When we reach the end times, Judgment Day, Armageddon, whatever you want to call it, when we reach these times of accelerated energy in which we are in now, the purging times we are in now, the time of great exposure, part of that all happening, part of the chaos that we're experiencing is because the cosmic rays are hitting us differently than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. We're finally receiving the cosmic rays of the golden age, and these cosmic rays will pull us up into the golden age, into what we would call the age of Aquarius. The Mayans knew this. They had their long count calendar, a calendar system so specific and so powerful. We don't even keep time as good as the Mayans. All right. Some of our ancestors kept significantly better time because it was a long form time where they were tracking large scale cosmic and galactic cycles. So they wouldn't fall into necessarily the kind of chaos we're falling into now, because they know that the sun is changing, the stars are changing, not in their position in the sky necessarily, but in the type of energy that they're emitting, and also the unseen rays that are hitting us are becoming more and more intense, creating this purging effect that we are seeing in society and we are feeling within our own selves. That's why, okay? And so one of the things that this does is it purifies humanity. If you are in this, it's acting like a cleansing force. It's acting like a force that's going into your very cells and purifying it. It's shaking you awake. It's shaking humanity awake. It's very, very hard to lie to yourself. It's very, very hard not to see corruption. Okay, it's very, very hard not to see corruption within ourselves and also in the world. All of this is right on time. Bang on time. It is metaphysics. It is the metaphysics of light. We're all light of different densities and vibration. And when we start getting that higher light coming in from the various suns, we start to change, okay? This is part of the mechanism of evolution, okay? We are driven by cosmic forces. We are a cosmic force ourselves. So what happens at the end of these cycles is the sun starts becoming different. And in this lecture, I talk about how the sun started changing in intensity and getting more intense. And if you are a Bill Gates, if you are somebody who is a social engineering overlord, you are going to want to probably stop the effect of the sun on humanity. You're going to want to slow that down. You're not going to want, and also we have to understand that the sun is really also the seat of Christ consciousness. This is the core of all of these sun worshipping cults. The sun is where Christ consciousness streams to us from. And our sun is part of a several sun system in which energy is stepped down onto us. It happens as we kind of involve and evolve, okay? And so there will be a desire among these sort of elite groups that are really behind. They're really behind in every sense of the word. They may have amassed power or wealth or whatever, but in the sense of being human, they almost are no longer that. And so the return of Christ consciousness and the changing of the sun is extremely painful for them. Consciousness will start to change and they'll basically be phased out of power. That's the reality. You cannot have Christ consciousness hitting people and not have it bring us to our knees. And we're in the hard part now. But Christ consciousness is a purifying, uplifting force. And that is why people say, well, is Christ returning? Yeah. He is returning, and he's returning as energy. And that is terrifying to these individuals. So if they can block the sun, they can slow down human evolution. Maybe enough that they can pull the levers enough to give themselves an upper hand for a while. Maybe long enough to, I don't know, get off planet? I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, this video is getting long. I've had a blast with you guys today. Thank you, Peace Creature. Thank you, everybody who is commenting. Oh, and also John Shore, you mentioned chemtrails. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another example. And of course, it's global warming. Do not get caught up in mainstream climate narratives easily. Ask yourself, is this a valid issue that the earth has? Say the acidification of the oceans, massive pollution, you know, unmitigated corporations that actually the corporations that are mega corporations contribute more greenhouse gas emissions than any average human does. Yet people are expected to not drive cars, yet corporations go basically unchecked. We have to start being very suspicious of these humanitarian narratives coming forward from the mega social engineers, these types, because we cannot allow our compassion and our concern to be channeled into solutions that actually enslave us more, or that don't actually solve the problem, or that complicate the problem, because that is something very real. It's the manipulation of our compassion and this trickery that goes on where they can actually bring in these weird, dark technologies that actually harm the planet more. So we have to be very, very careful of, especially coming into 2021, I mean 22, 23, because it's going to be very much about the climate. It's going to be very much about healing the earth. We have to be careful that under this guise of healing the earth, we're not doing things like blocking our sun, that we're not doing things that actually only benefit the elite few. Sorry, but if we think that people won't do that, we need to grow up. We need to realize what's going on. So, thank you so much for joining me today. We went deep. We went a little bit conspiracy, but that's okay. We do that on this channel. We don't avoid that. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, all my love your way, and I will see you in our next video.